All right, so today is the Leadership Forum. As usual, the show will take a different format. There'll be 5-minute presentation from all my panelists who are already here, just having a discussion on the same issues we're going to talk about in just a bit. And also, first, we want to start with the political issues of the day. The theme for today is Kenyan is my tribe. You're welcome to send in any comments you have on Twitter. Hashtag is AMLive at Trevor Ombija at AMLive. You can call in anytime. We'll pick your calls and also set some of the questions you have to the panelists. I want to start with the introductions, and from my immediate left, Cynthia Mutere. And she's been here several times. Governance analyst and Ford Kenya Women League chairperson. I will also be giving you more details about her in just a bit. We're still waiting for Joshua Kiptoo, who's a lawyer and political analyst as well. But Dr. Mwangi is also here. He's a lecturer and leadership coach in Strathmore. And then we have Professor G.L. Wajackoyah, an advocate and also a professor of law at the USIU. Thanks for making time.
Thank you for having us.
Cynthia, since you're the lady in the building, we'll start with you. What do you
my
make,
pleasure.
What do you make of the political situation? You've seen NASA saying there's we call it the James Bond factor. NASA says if Jubilee knew that this person was a suspect, how come he's not been arrested? So should the question be whether this person is a suspect or who exactly this person is working with? Because NASA claims this person used to work with Jubilee. Jubilee claims this person is now working with NASA. Are we losing the point in between here?
This is the home stretch. This is the home stretch, a couple of days to the election. And of course, all gloves are out. And one of the key things that it has been, at least what was unveiled this week from the two coalitions was inclusivity and fighting corruption. And so they're going to be standing on fighting on corruption. And we're now beginning to see names being dropped or this name being called out, really, to just highlight the players that are behind this corruption. And of course, then Jubilee on the defense. And so we're seeing this offense from NASA basically trying to begin to address what they've said that they're going to be doing, and that is corruption. And so Jubilee doesn't want to be seen as the one that is the home or the environment that encourages corruption, and so throwing back that person. So corruption, we're coming back to corruption. That was the conversation for almost 2 years, 3 years in the country. Yeah. And now as we go into the final stretch of this election campaigning, we're seeing names starting to come out of who are really the people who bear the greatest responsibility for this corruption, and we're seeing people who are doing business with government.
So it's like both sides have agreed that corruption is there. It's just that who is more corrupt than the other.
Yeah, and so everyone wants to push it onto the other side. No, it's you. No, it's you. No, you're the one who's doing this. And so it's something that we as Kenyans now begin to see now. Which side gives me more hope? I mean, which is the environment that someone that's going to correct that situation, or an environment that is going to continue to perpetrate that situation?
Professor Wajackoyah, what do you make of this whole situation?
Both of them are corrupt. Okay. Those who are calling others corrupt are more corrupt than the ones they are calling. Mm-hmm. and they have no moral authority to pinpoint fingers when they are riddled with scandals that have not yet been addressed. I will start by saying the following, and I know Mr. Kiptoo, my learned friend, will jump on it, but I will welcome him to dig on him headstrong. If we start with the with the leaders who are throwing words, someone like Ruto, the DP, should not be the one talking about corruption, because there are scandals that he has not substantiated. There's the Langata Primary School issue. There is other things that are within, and I will say it openly on television. He also has no moral authority to throw mud at others. Now, if you look at NASA leaders are also riddled with scandals. We have the Kenyan embassy issue, which links Wetangula. We have the Mavoko graves, which link Mudavadi.
Which he was cleared of.
Which he was cleared of. He was not cleared. If he was cleared, then let us see the evidence, leave alone the commission clearance. We need clearance through the courts. And unless the courts clear him...
You need clearance by public perception.
Yeah, I know you are wherever from Mudavadi's area, but that's okay. If you look at Mumias Sugar Company, and we look at molasses plant, There are those who have been mentioned in it, and I know some people jump on it, but that's the reality. So bringing in Jimmy Wanjigi, I mean, that is defaming Jimmy Wanjigi. As a lawyer, and as my friend Kiptoo is here, you cannot just draw mud and throw at somebody using your political office or your opposition political office so that you leave that person defenseless. I think Wanjigi has a case against these people.
Dr. Caesar, what do you make of this illustration?
Yeah, Professor here has a very good analysis of step-by-step cases. But I just want to paint a bigger picture. What we are seeing in our country right now is the reality of what I call a tragedy. Okay? And the tragedy is our politics is one of extraction. It's an opportunity to plunder, to take advantage of your position. It's not an opportunity to serve. And therefore, as they throw barbs at each other about who is more corrupt than the other, they're all in the same pot, seeking ways of extracting what they can get out of this country. And in fact, there's a beautiful book called Why Nations Fail. And the reason why nations fail is because of the extractive nature of the political leadership. They seek opportunities. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see the reality of the lies that are being spread around. If you're going for a governor's position, for example, and a governor's salary is, for argument's sake, 1 million shillings or 1.5 million, it means in a year, you will earn maybe 15, 20 million shillings. In 5 years, you'll earn 100 million shillings. But if you're spending $500 million to $1 billion shillings to get into that position, there must be something wrong somewhere. And obviously, you're going to recover this many times over. And how will you recover? Through the plunder that you will be able to get involved in.
Where does that leave the electorate then?
It is a tragedy. It's still a tragedy. Where does that leave the electorate? We have to start learning to elect people who we can trust. Because we can't trust those who they are. Yeah. And unfortunately, these are the people who buy votes and they impress everybody. They fly around with choppers and they have a lot of money. But they leave a trail of destruction wherever they come. Yeah. And I think Professor here has mentioned some of them. And the trail of destruction that they have left wherever they've been. So no one has a moral right to really accuse anybody of being corrupt. All right. It seems that's the system that we perfected. Okay. Tragically, I see. Yeah.
And Joshua Kiptoo is also joining us, a lawyer and a political analyst as well. Thanks for making time.
Thank you.
Before you came in, we were trying to figure out where NASA says that they're not expressly saying that they're not associated with Jimmy Wanjigi. They're just saying that he was with Jubilee first.
Sure.
Yeah, and this is just a suspect so far. Are we losing the point here in terms of integrity and credibility?
We are not losing per se. You know, the problem is simple. If you look at both two coalitions, when it comes to the issue of corruption, it always has some form of alliance with both sides. Jubilee is only the most recent, and being in power, theirs offers us fresh memory and more so. Unlike before, we have a more informed society and we have more informational platform. That's why the scandals and the sleaze associated with Jubilee is all out here. But that doesn't in any way take away NASA from that discussion. I would surprise Professor Wajackoyah in that I agree with him on this. When it comes to even NASA itself, you know, all those, the key principles, if I pick out, for example, Wetangula, to be specific, he's been embroiled. You remember the Tokyo scandal, that was a big deal. And that takes away from them the Puritan high position where they would easily speak out very strongly. That's why it's so easy for Jubilee to hit back. When you bring in Jimmy Wanjigi as an individual, if it's a fact that he's previously been in the alliance with Jubilee and is now with NASA. So that again now just reinforces that perception and argument that it's quite difficult for you to speak out confidently and say this coalition represents better. However, that doesn't take away I don't subscribe to the idea that we should therefore just be content and say that should be it, they shouldn't speak out. Remember, when you have a regime in power, the opposition, however their background, however the issue, they still have to speak out the same. There's something different. If they are to come to power, we will use the same benchmark, we will use the same yardstick. So that stands. Then you would also had ask a very good question, where does it leave the electorate? As Caesar has said it so well, that our politics or our leadership are extractive in nature. That is by design. It doesn't mean that the citizens are absolved. They are part and parcel of the problem. In fact, it's an unholy alliance between the leadership and the electorate, in the sense that if, for example, Trevor, you were to go run a very genuine, clean campaign, how many people will turn their heads and say, let's give this guy a chance? A tiny minority comes through that group. Majority of them are the ones that have to be flashy, and for them to be flashy, they have to look for serious cash, they have to bribe, they have to give out money. So you understand that it is something that is two-way. How then do we deal with that? We only need to start from somewhere. I still feel that the battle for corruption in Kenya should begin with the highest form of political will, and that can only be infused from the highest office in the land. If and when we will get a very strong form of political will, for example, from the presidency, don't even go to the legislature. I still feel, if you look at other examples, and if I use sub-Saharan Africa, Magufuli, our neighbor down here, has shown the way. It only calls for the highest office to come out. Just show the way, show the will, and everything starts to turn around. So I think our corruption issue is bigger and even beyond these two coalitions, and that is why NASA wouldn't be the best person to speak out, but that doesn't deny them the chance to come out hard. And that's why it was even clear for them to say the deputy president is the last person to bring the corruption issues.
And that is my main question, because who has the moral authority to talk about integrity shouldn't be the point.
You know, we are mixed up. You know, we are mixed up.
Corruption
we are mixed up.
Something has to be done.
You see, for these principles, you know, the problem is this, and that is where now you have to. It is a careful balance. You have a case whereby in both coalitions you can point at, like it's easy to point at. Like, for example, if in NASA someone like Mudavadi speaks, possibly we can't listen, because I would agree with her that for the symmetry scandal, he in fact the real persons were taken to court. His name was absolved.
And that's what I want to start by saying, that the professor here highlights all the personalities in the NASA coalition, tainting all their names without even going further to say then what was done at that point when those cases were highlighted. When you again reinforce the name of Wetangula with the scandal, with the Tokyo scandal, seeing what happened then, was he then cleared when he steps aside for almost a year and a half? I don't want to defend the personalities, but my argument would be, what is the viability of these political promises from either Jubilee or from NASA? Who are you going to go with? Which of the leadership that now is presented to us?
Who's the lesser evil?
Yeah.
If you talk about lesser evil,
the viability of these promises, if I'm looking at inclusivity, which I feel that Jubilee is not presenting to me, then I would be wanting to go with NASA. If I'm looking for maybe to say that gender is going to be really looked at, and it is one of the pillars that NASA is presenting, even if you take your eye, but that's
gender,
no.
Inclusivity, yes.
What are the 7 pillars that NASA is standing?
Gender, no.
I'm talking about the viability of implementing these things. They are not in government. They have not had that opportunity to make sure that some of these laws that would encourage
but in opposition, they have not been very vibrant on the gender issue. So I would agree with you on inclusivity. And quickly, what I can agree with you, Trevor, if you talk about a lesser evil, this should be the basis. I wouldn't be extremely confident and speak and say NASA will come and fight corruption. But however, on the basis that we are judging a government midterm, I would rather side with the opposition on this and say maybe. And the issue is maybe, because I still insist. The only way you can prove that they will be consistent is after they are in and you see the political will. But if it's a question of between the two, I would rather say maybe. I will side with the opposition.
Professor Wajackoyah, should we be taking a risk with the leadership that we elect?
We are
that's exactly what we are doing
right now. Because if you look at, and I'll go back to my sister here, I know she's a bit, of course, gender equity is okay for the first time. If you look at NASA, and I'm not saying that I'm pro-NAS or pro-Jubilee, even Uhuru doesn't know me anyway, and I'll say it openly. The issue of gender is lacking. It's 4 men riddled with the past that we know, leave alone the commissions that come into, and you know, when you talk of Kenyan commissions, what are you talking about? Yeah. Commissions that are tainted with arms twisting. And if you are in power and there's a commission, you are in power, you're a minister, you're a vice president, and there's a commission, that commission is at your mercy. Because the appointing authority at that particular time is the government. So when we say that somebody was absolved of the grave issue, he was not absolved to conclusion. The only person who can absolve you in conclusion is the Supreme Court of this country. And that means that you've gone through all the remedies. Which was not
instituted at the time.
Yes, but we shall institute it one day. Because a crime never rots. For your information, a crime never rots. You can cover it with the commissions, lame duck commissions. But in the long run, somebody somewhere will come out and pinpoint at the truth. But I'm not saying that Mudavadi stole at the moment. Mudavadi is my friend. I have attended his wedding. He has been in my house in London, and I have no personal qualms with him. But I'm talking as a Kenyan on national scandals, which have not yet been brought to conclusivity. But when it comes to inclusiveness, Jubilee is not inclusive. It has not included Kenyans into the administration. And I said this on TV the other day, and somebody almost roasted me. If you come to ministerial appointments, Western Province got a raw deal. The person who was appointed first as a minister for environment, who is also related to me, is a lady from Trans Nzoia who is married in Kiambu. Remember, Kakamega, Busia, Bungoma did not have anything at that particular time. If you come to Eugene Wamalwa, whom I admire a lot, Eugene just came in after arm twisting. So the issue of inclusiveness does not arise unless we go otherwise. And also if you look at Raila Odinga, when he was prime minister, he was not also very inclusive in some areas in this country. He was not inclusive in the Nusumkate government. If you look at Busia, the appointments that came from Busia were more or less related to his wife, Aida Odinga. And I can remember the lady from Samia who was appointed on the audit, what have you.
Okay,
but I'm not going to go in that.
They're not here to
we got 2 ministers from Busia, and he's from Busia. I don't know really what he's talking about.
Busia was overly represented.
He really needs to get back and touch with what's going on
here,
Busia, because I really do think that he's not in touch with what is happening. You've been in America too long. You need to really get in touch with what's happening.
The discussion we have here right now. We've now gone to district politics, representation of all our areas.
But is it even practical to expect the government to have all the 43
It is not possible in a country that is as diverse as this to have 100% satisfaction in representation in a cabinet. It is practically not possible, guys. So why do we keep on dwelling on these issues? Well, what we want is competence within our government that will drive this country to the next level. But when we keep on dwelling on other minor issues, we lose track of what is important. Well, we started this discussion on a discussion about corruption, on a discussion about whether we can trust leaders, on a discussion about whether we have leaders of honor who can be trusted to take this country forward through dedicated service to the people of this country. That's where we started. Now we've gone deep dive into who is represented where and how many people are not represented. I think that is
those
the challenge
appointments
we have.
do skew perception, and perception is more reality.
We're trying to talk on inclusivity, and I'm trying to add on what you said before, that Jubilee was not inclusive. I'm just trying to give a paradigm shift in terms of giving an example.
And made the example that the Nusumkati, that Raila never gave anything to the home county.
You know what? Go ahead and discuss this is freedom of emancipation.
Yeah, but maybe Trevor, if we continue in this angle, it seems like we need representation in the cabinet from every county. So we'll have 47 cabinet secretaries, and then within the counties, we're going to say the north and the south are different, so we'll need another 47. And within those north and south, there'll be clans within there arguing that we need representation, and that is the challenge we have of fragmentation. We have lost it in this country because of that, because we forget to focus on what is important.
Okay, let's talk about chapter 6, which is the integrity chapter. Is it a failure of institutions, or is it a failure of individuals? Because Omar Bond here on Twitter says it's a band of thieves but they look after their own, don't they?
Maybe a quick
Enforcement.
answer to that is that the institution, two things. One, we may lack such strong personalities. Rarely do you get a strong personality who can withstand political pressure and interference, because in Kenya, institutions are normally cannibalized, and it is through political gerrymandering, nothing else. Whereby, just to give an example, the EACC has been on the spot, and if you remember the EACC, the former commissioners, just before the new team that came in, the former commissioner, how are they hounded out? It was through political process, in the sense that they could be pressurized. You could see stories that the state house could call shots and tell them, you guys have to resign, we will give you this. So that tells you, one, the political interference will definitely affect the ability of individuals to operate in those independent institutions. So what is the remedy for that? If you have these strong personalities who can stand up to, can I give an example, who I think so far so good can be said to be a poster for such kind of a situation? The Auditor General. I don't know if you saw two occurrences, that when they were invited for the corruption summit, and he was the one who was given the most dressing down, and he was being told, why would you go investigate money trail on Eurobond? And soon after that, you could see political schemes trying to hound him out of office. You could see even the manner of hearings being held in parliament. They were purely witch hunt, but he withstood it. So we need such strong individuals who can withstand. But importantly, it's not about the institutions failing, but rather we lack the political will. There is no political will to fight. If there is that political will, and you know, institutions are interdependent. Yeah. For example, for you to convict, you need really good investigations from the DCI. Then the DPP can have an easy time to bring the case before. In fact, I always take it wrongly when people accuse the judiciary. The judiciary is at the end of the process. You have investigation, you have a nicely prosecuted case. That is when judiciary can come in. So these institutions are interdependent, but the problem, absence of political will, and these individuals being politically appointed, you would understand that their allegiance lies with the political powers. So what happens? They can function, they have to look back at their masters, and what is the source of the corruption? The same political leadership.
All right, Cynthia?
We've tried to see the appointment of these personalities into constitutional offices be as transparent as possible. Of course, they've been publicized by the media. And of course, there has been public participation to say, really, who do you really want to be at the helm of such institutions? The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, the NCIC, and all these other institutions that need constitutional bodies, that the people that we expect to sit in there should really be getting their mandate from the Constitution and not from political appointment, or feeling like the tyranny of numbers in Parliament are the ones that decided for me to get that appointment, and therefore you're inclined to lean to one side of that and probably now be subject to what he's really saying. Yeah. But then we want then for people who can understand their mandate, that when I come into this office, then I stand on the law of the land and that I would be able to enforce it. So it really takes that person, the caliber of that person, who will be able to divorce himself from that political kind of environment and to stand on the Constitution and say, I am now the chair of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption, and I also have had the history of being a church leader, and therefore with this, I will be able to spearhead certain reforms, especially. You're talking about the investigative arm, especially in the Ethics and Anti-Corruption, to even be able to give it to the DPP to prosecute these cases. And then we'll begin to see that something is being done. So for Kenyans to have faith in these institutions that we have given ourselves in this constitution, that we are feeling they're just eating taxpayers' money and not giving us the money worth what they're spending.
Yeah, Professor Wajackoyah, I know you've been dealing with this a lot, and you're an advocate as well. Where's the missing link here?
The missing link is very clear.
Yeah.
Before appointments come into place, there is rapid lobbying by tribal-oriented leaders. And I'm talking in tandem of what they were saying, trying to persecute me, but I will stand on my point and I will not retract whatever I've said. Before somebody is appointed, you see that there is that meritorious kind of lobbying. Which tribe does he come from? Sure. This starts with the president. When it comes to a particular appointment, like what we had in the appointment of Inspector General of Police and his replacement, I think you guys know what happened at that particular time. This appointment must come back from where it was before. because of the power sharing deals. Sure. That's number one. Number two, you'll find out that equity does not involve those with clean and unclean hands. When the Chief Justice was appointed, and immediately after his appointment, you saw some political meandering in the process, and they came up and to say that now we have given this to Akisi, this is going to be politically correct, and you have to pay us back on this particular appointment. Now, if you look at the appointment of the DCI, and I've been a police officer for 12 years before I left the country, you find out that even in his appointment, there was those tribal kind of inclination. Who is going to do the job for us or what have you? So to cut the whole thing short is we do not have to blame those who are appointed, but we have to blame the appointing authorities because of political machinations. Sure. And I will agree with my friends here that there is that lobbying that comes in, party affiliation and tribal affiliation. So when it comes to the tribe, we cannot run away from it. It plays a big role in this country. And when it comes to defending those who have actually done mischievous activities, for example, like my friend Musalia Mudavadi or Wetangula or what have you, if something happened to them, they go back to Leland and say, we are being persecuted by Kikuyus, we are being prosecuted by what have you. So it is the tribal factor that plays a leading role in this.
Okay, Caesar, I see you.
Yeah, in fact, I like that question you ask, and I like what Professor here is saying about the tribal factor being the missing link and causing all the chaos. But I'd just like to take a step back and again take a macro perspective. I believe the missing link is a very simple one. Okay? We have the best constitution in the world, as we say, right? We in fact have another beautiful document called the Vision 2030. All these are beautiful, good things. But the one thing that is lacking is the dominance of enabling values which need to rest in individuals. And most important, they need to rest in the leadership of the country. I'll just give you a simple example. Values rest in individuals. They are then practiced as behaviors. They are shown as behaviors. And once that is seen in leadership, then others follow. Okay? Now, if we look at the leadership values, even if you get an appointment into one of these constitutional bodies, your intent there as a leader may be to please your masters who appointed you, right? It may be self-enrichment, right? It may be extraction, as we talked about. And those are the values that dominate in almost every place in this country, and they're driven by the leaders. Now, unless that changes, nothing is going to change. We may have the most beautiful constitution, with the most beautiful words, with the most beautiful chapters on integrity, etc.
But how does that change is the question.
Now,
how does that change?
That is now an issue of individuals saying, it is my responsibility. There's an initiative called Kenya Daima, okay? And that initiative, Kenya Daima, which means True Kenyan, is saying that we need to take personal responsibility. If my friend here referred to Tanzania, where we have seen a president taking personal responsibility and saying, I believe in clean government and I'm going to do what I can as best as possible to clean up the government. You know, that is personal responsibility. Sure. Now we need more and more people doing this so that we have a huge mass of people at leadership level and at other levels changing this country. And I'll just take you a step back. If you think of the three largest economies in this world, which are they?
US, China.
US, China, and?
Europe.
Japan.
Germany or Japan.
Germany is not there. US, China, and Japan. Germany is not there. India is not there. And which is the odd one out? It is Japan, my dear friends. Japan is a small country, smaller than Kenya, with only 130 million people, compared to the US with over 350 million people, China with over 1.6 billion people, but it ends up in the top three. Why? It is simply because of the values they hold. They hold serious values about honor, they hold serious values about hard work, they hold serious values about honesty, and they hold serious values about respecting one another.
Okay.
And those are the exact values we lack here.
All right. In the next hour, I want us to talk about the IEBC and whether they're ready for the elections. But Cynthia, before we wrap up this particular topic, Dr. Caesar is bringing in an issue of individual values. And there's also this saying that the leaders we have is a reflection of who we are. Is this who we really are?
Sure.
I think we gave ourselves these values, and if maybe we can start inculcating these values right from birth, right from the house, into the school, into whichever sphere that someone finds themselves into, so that we have those values that he's speaking about, that we value honor, we value hard work. I'll give it to Kenyans. They're hardworking, but then they're very dishonest because they see the political environment. The only way to get ahead is through corruption, and that is in our society. It's a culture. You can't just blame it on the political class. You also blame it on the community. And where is that value? Why don't we honor honesty? Why can't I make an honest shilling? And because I can't live on an honest shilling, I need to make a little extra.
There was actually a research there that showed that more than 50% of the youth in the country today are willing to make wealth by hook or crook.
Trevor,
more than half.
You know, when you talk about individual, if we are to focus on solutions, the idea about teaching, we're already doing that. Teaching and inculcating. Which parent will teach a child to steal? None. So it's already happening. Our culture itself boasts such evil and bad ways. That's already cultural in us. However, we are at a position where the question is, what turns it round? How do we turn it round? We should focus our minds in that. And I'll just pick out what Caesar says. It calls for an individual. But the difference here is which individual can bring the most effective turnaround? Who can be able to start the process? And I still feel that one lies with leadership. Not even the entire leadership. It starts with one leader. If one can start the process, even if you look at the history of the world, surprisingly, nation states, the ones that have been able to make it, it always started with one decisive good leader who turned it around. If you go to Singapore, in fact, when that founding president died, you could see the tribute, and everything was attributed to the individual. For example, why do you think Rwanda, for example, has two kind of discussion? That it took Paul Kagame to turn it around, but again there's the danger. If he goes, do we have any other person who can sustain? Tanzania, to be specific, they have been peaceful, they have a very strong they have a strong party system. But what is different this time? Because of an individual. It calls for individuals. So if you want a quick fix, where we are as a Kenya, we need one person to take that stand. Professor and I still feel that political will
you'd probably
lies
put
with
in
the
a multifaceted approach, then use the leader and use the home as well. And not just say that it's just
you know, the whole it is already happening in the society.
Every area.
Individually, you know, look here, in 2003, can I even use Kenya? In 2003, when we were overhauling and say the opposition comes in, the entire opposition, did you see the goodwill the citizens had? So what changed? What happened in 2003 when everyone, in fact, for the first time you had a president being elected by 67% of Kenya. For the first time, even if you had to use the ethnic arithmetic, you had the two polarizing sides being on the same side, and Kenya was voted the most optimistic. That tells you the citizens are ready anytime, any day. In fact, if you go around, we are a dishonest society because in private, all of us agree, hapa tumefanya makosa. But in public, we speak differently. So that tells you we only need that face.
All right. Professor Wajackoyah, how do we turn this around?
While I agree with what my friends are saying, one thing we have to look into is how do we turn around instead of waiting for a leader like Kagame. Of course, Kagame is very much praised here, but those of us who have handled cases of refugees from Rwanda, in the UK, we know the other side of Kagame that the world does not want to paint. The man is literally a dictator. A lot of Rwandese are dying if those would not want to toe his line. And if you look at Singapore at the same time, yes, we have got Mr. Lee Kuan-jong, who has ruled Singapore for 49 years. But if you look at the human rights record in Singapore, it was one of the worst in the whole world. Had Moi applied the same mathematics when he was a leader for 24 years, probably would have advanced in terms of economic development and then lost it at all in terms of human rights. But having said that, let me put a footnote. When it comes to changing around is the responsibility of the government. The government has to introduce a curriculum, and that curriculum has to be introduced in schools. And as my sister said, she used the term by birth. If kids are born and they go to school and the school is well equipped with the right materials, the right content, of teaching this kid that corruption is bad. Corruption is bad, prostitution is bad, ABCD is bad, and they teach that from class A to class 8 up to the university and make it as a profession. That will also inculcate a mindset in this particular kid that corruption is bad, and that has been done very successfully in China.
But we teach it.
well, what you are teaching, I'm yet to see the content.
No,
because, and I'm also yet to see those who have written that content,
Yeah.
who have actually contributed. And I'm yet also to see what model they have applied. And I'm yet also to see what kind of research they did to do that. If you say you are teaching it, yes, everybody
If you
talks
go
of,
to the curriculum, they are taught.
yeah.
That is why you say there is
Yeah,
a
let me
50%.
finish. Yeah, I have kids and I know what I'm talking about. I've lived where the content-based curriculum on corruption and good morals and ethics has been taught for the last 500 years. And that's why you see the mindset of the Brits is very different. It's not myopic in such a way that if you take a Kenyan from this country today, and I'm talking of all of us here, to Europe to study, they will go there on a class model. I'm going to study, I can't go into train, and that also happened to me. I want to go in and feel like I've nimefika. You have to wait until nature beats or hits your head for you to turn around to be a grave digger, to know the values of values, and then you start again from there. A Kenyan today cannot take on any job. If a Kenyan, like my friend Dr. Ani, my friend, my learned friend and teacher at the Kenya School of Law, or I mean Nairobi University, if he lost his job today, if you lost your job today, would you agree to be a grave digger? Would you take on any job? But in Europe, somebody will take on that job. For example, if a minister is actually sacked today or loses his job, he will go for social security, and then he'll look for any other job, including bus driving. But why is he doing this? He's doing this because that has been the culture that has been inculcated in that society for as long as his birthplace or right is concerned. So the issue of saying, or of the issue of apportioning responsibility to wait for who is going to come to teach us needs experience and exposure. If you are not exposed, like what Mzee Jomo Kenyatta did when he was in exile, and he came up with a different mindset, which led to Kenyans at that particular time kujivunia kuwa Mkenya, because the president came in and said there will be free healthcare, and that healthcare was affordable healthcare, which was available at that particular time, where we had mobile clinics in rural areas, a model that Fidel Castro took on and built the best healthcare system in the world in Cuba, which was actually adopted by the British government. So the issue of waiting for somebody to come will not be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Caesar.
Yeah, I agree with the professor here that education needs to be inculcated. But I also want to paint another bigger picture here. The first school of any child, is in the family. And I think my sister here mentioned that. It's in the family. And believe it or not, if we can get that right, we will not need the government to intervene. That is the primary responsibility of parents, is to educate their children, beginning with education in values. And if I look at my own personal life, I can see the education my parents gave me in that regard, and many other families, of course. And if we can focus on strengthening families, because we also have a problem in this country where there's a breakup in this institution. Okay? If we can strengthen that, believe it or not, it will go a long way. I just want to give you a short anecdote. Tony Blair, when he was Prime Minister of the UK, and the professor here who has lived in the UK might be aware of this little story. He had policies to strengthen families in the UK. They allocated money to strengthen families in the UK and strengthen family life. And he was asked, why do you spend money on these kind of things? He said, because I don't have enough policemen to police the population. And if I can strengthen the families, the policing will be done right there. In this country, and I differ here with my brother, parents have not been teaching their children the right thing. We had the examination scandals in this very country before the good Professor Dr. Matiang'i came in, where parents were colluding with teachers and examiners and bribing them to get examination papers for their children. What were they teaching their children? Achieve the end, whatever the means. And there were parents who were doing that. Second point I want to mention. We say that it is difficult here, and I like what my friend here, my learned friend here said. He said, we need individuals who are determined to make change. In this country, in the public service right now, we have such individuals. Dr. Matiang'i has made change in a very important area of our country. So it is not impossible.
Individual.
All right.
And he's an individual who is determined.
Auditor General is an individual.
The Auditor General is doing his best. The banking sector has got its own leader there who is doing his best, the governor. So we have individuals. Now, if we have more and more pockets of this kind of individuals, my dear friends, this country can become a superpower.
Okay.
We cannot be rolling here in the mud, struggling with all this nonsense.